Chapter 2. Healing the Sick. It has almost it has been almost 5 months since he arrived in Sasa, and despite many rendezvous with potential employers, Monga did not seem to be able to find the right position in a decent hospital where he could work. He would spend the day trying to find a job, and when the evening came, would go back home to his books and novels. Until this new hospital opened its door a few blocks away from where he lived. It was not a big one, but they were hiring pediatricians. Monga made sure he dropped his resume, and within 2 weeks he finally got his first job. What a relief, he thought to himself. I know it is not high paying, but at least I get to do what I was trained to do in university. On the first day at work, he was given an office, and already he received his first patients. A young boy that had stuck a pea in his nose and couldn't get it out. How did this happen? He asked the child's mother. He was playing in the kitchen, she replied, and when I got there I found him crying and then realized something was stuck in his nose. Okay, it's not a big deal, he said. We're going to get that pea out of there in no time. He reached for a curvy needle and started inserting it into the boy's nose until the pea was completely removed. The little boy could once more breathe properly. Thank you, doctor, said the boy's mother. I thought this could end up getting all the way up into his brain and that I might lose my precious boy. No risks, replied Monga. There's actually no connection between the nose and the brain, and the worst he could have swallowed it, and that's all. You are welcome anyways. Keep an eye on this little guy. Dr. Monga liked giving children a small candy every time he was done treating them. That earned him the reputation to be the most loved doctor by children in the whole hospital. And so the days went by and routine started settling in the life of Monga. He would finish his hours and get back into his little 4-room home and his books. This lonely life eventually started weighing on him, and from time to time during the weekend he would head to the Sasa city center and enjoy some drinks with work colleagues. When they were out, they could talk of everything, mostly work and women. His friends liked to tease him about his shy nature and why he did not find himself a girlfriend. Not yet ready, he would reply. When the right one comes along, I will not let her go, he said. Although he liked them, the woman of Sasa was way too aggressive for his tastes. He needed a woman that would match his calm personality. Not too talkative was criteria number one. Monga was not the talkative type, and if he was to attach himself to a woman in Sasa, that wouldn't be a great match because most of them were very preachy. So he waited. After darkness started falling on Sasa, he and his friend headed to the Ganda music bar to continue the weekend there until late at night, then he would go home. The hospital where he was working was not the busiest in the city. That allowed them to have these weekends. Although he laughed and displayed happiness on the outside, Monga felt a great void inside that he needed to fill. He felt like the life he was living was not his full potential, and that he deserved to be in a position where not only could he earn more money, but also could be helpful to many more people in need. So he decided he should start dropping resumes at other biggest hospitals, not only in Sasa but also in other cities across the land of the Middle. The land of the Middle was large, rich, and diverse like no other place in the world. Almost 200 tribes shared and cohabited peacefully, doing the best they could to survive. On the north, it was bordered by the Upper Middle Land, on the northeast by the Dark Lands, on the west by the Western Middle Land, on the south by the Lands of Diamonds, on the southeast by the Snake River Land, on the east by the Cranes Land, the North Lands of Apple, the Southern Lands of Apples, and the lands of the Deep Lake. Salsa was the capital city of the Land of the Middle and served as administrative and political center. 2 years after he was hired, Monga decided he would move to the east of the country to visit an old friend, and an old friend of his that was also a medical doctor. Moni was his name, and he had opened his own hospital and believed Monga would be able to help with the overwhelming work he could no longer handle by his own. For a reason unknown to him, Mora felt like his whole destiny was to travel to the east, and after he had made all necessary arrangements at the hospital, everything was ready for him to go begin a new life in the east. The journey would be incredibly long. First, he needed to travel upstream the great river and reach the town of Ngani. From there, the great river was no longer navigable and would then travel by road to the city of Dutu and then Vira, where his friend lived. The good news is that on the journey to Ngani, the boat would stop by Bumba, where he was impatient to go greet his mother, father, and brothers. On the first day of the first month of July, he departed on a long trip upstream the great river. Within 2 days, they had reached the shores of Bumba, and since he needed another hour walk by feet to reach the village, he would have a great to grab a boat from Gani the next morning. Monga has returned, screamed the little boy who had seen him walking down the road, and here he was with a bag on his back 2 years after he had left. What a great joy would be for his family. Immediately as he entered the village, a crowd of familiar faces had already gathered around him, and soon brothers and mother came to see the return of their son. What are all the chants in the village? Said Monga the father. Your son has returned, answered one servant who had just heard the good news. Monga the father was overwhelmed with joy. He ran outside his house to join the crowd of happy villagers and welcome his son. As soon as he saw his father approaching with the village chief and the great sorcerer on his right, the crowd made way and a silence happened. Monga fell on his knees as a sign of humility and immediately presented the gift he had brought to the village chief. A bottle of expensive wine it was, and also he asked for a blessing from the great sorcerer. Rise, my son, said the chief, and you may now walk to your father. Monga stood up and greeted his father. Before everything else, he presented him with a gift as well that he pulled from his bag. It was a fine black suit and a leopard hat like it was worn in the great cities of the land of the middle. His father accepted the gift with joy, and to his mother, Monga offered fine clothes that also put a big smile on her face. What brings you back, young leopard? Are you finally returning to us? Asked the great sorcerer. No, he replied. I'm traveling east to the town of Vira, where I was called to practice my job by a dear friend of mine. But I could not have passed by without visiting my family. By doing this, you demonstrate great heart and loyalty, Monga, and because of that, you shall receive the greatest of all blessing when you reach your destination, added the great sorcerer. Monga smiled somehow. These words comforted him in the conviction he had about his journey to the east. He knew something of great value was going to be revealed to him, and from that will emerge a great future that will be the entire rest of his life. We shall throw another feast to celebrate the return of my son, said Monga the father. He was gone for 2 years and now he's come back to us once again. And so shall all the sons and daughters of the Monga never forget the way that brings them back home, he added. The next morning, Monga woke up early hours and was ready to depart. He went into his father's house and said goodbye to him, promising that just like this time, it would never be too long before he returned to them. But before he left, he also went to say goodbye to the village chief and ask blessing from the great sorcerer. When he arrived at the hut where the chief lived, he found them performing a ritual on a young boy that had fallen deeply sick. They covered him with mud and chants were being made to cast out the sickness demon that had possessed him. Who's that young man? Asked Monga. It is the chief's son. He fell deeply ill during the night, replied the great sorcerer. Monga recognized the symptoms almost instantly. The boy was suffering from malaria, he could guess. Luckily, he had with him a first aid kit that would come in handy. If it pleases the great sorcerer and our chief, allow me to use the magic from the north on the boy, he asked politely. The sorcerer hesitated, but then he thought he had been trying to heal the boy for days and had not been able to achieve success. After a quick eye contact together with the village chief, he just nodded, thus giving his approval for Monga to perform the ritual. After taking the temperature of the young boy and blood sample, he ran some tests using some portable lab equipment he was also traveling with in his suitcase, and just like he suspected, the boy was actually suffering from malaria. He therefore administered him with some quinine and instructed he should be fed the pills a day for at least a week. After he was done, it was already afternoon, and he thought that he could not leave before the young boy had been healed. He would have to wait another week, or at least until the boy got better. The chief, the sorcerer, and the Monga's parents were so proud of him for delaying his journey and finding time to take care of the young man's suffering. After only 3 days, news got to the Monga's household that the chief's son was healed and that he could run and play again. Screams of joy resounded all across the village. For the first time, the demon of malaria was healed, and this was a cause for a great celebration. A servant sent from the chief's home approached and knocked on the Munga's family's door. The chief demands to see you, young Leopard, at once, he said. Munga was seated with his father and brother in the living room and stood up. May I come with my family? He asked. I see no objections to that. You may all come and share into the triumph of your son over an ancient demon, said the servant. They all left the house and departed toward the village chief's house. As they approached, they could hear drums and celebration and dancers, singers welcoming them into the chief's home. When he reached, the chief was on his throne with the sorcerer on his right and his son below him. They all got closer and kneeled. Then the chief stood up and the music and dancing stopped. Because you defeated the ancient demon and saved my son, young Leopard, I shall cover you in riches. Here is my gift to you. I bless you with 100 pounds of gold and any amount of land in the territory of Boomba for you and your family. Everyone in the village clapped and rejoiced except the great sorcerer, whose eyes turned red with jealousy. Manga noticed but was too happy with the chief's gift to pay real attention. With the gift he was given, not only could he travel to Vera and start a new living, but he would never, ever have to struggle with making money again. They gave him the means to start the life he deserves to live.